So the first day in 2 weeks that there's no Women's World Cup, so I got a little breather today.
Yeah.
I'm on Film Week right after this. I'm
Yeah.
going to jet right from this podcast over to Film Week and sit in front of a different microphone. And I see that you are editing, and it's looking good.
Oh, it definitely looks good.
Yeah.
You do these things, and you get real close to them. So I'm really lucky that I can send this stuff to you guys. You know, the guys, Mark, including.
Yeah.
And you guys are like my sounding board.
Yeah.
And you're very clean and you're very honest. You have to be able to take that. So you filmmakers out there, look, you got to be able to take clean, honest, direct criticism from the folks who know what they're talking about. And you guys have been that for me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Excellent
No, it's a process.
Oh man!
It is a
I mean,
process.
you guys are editing now. You're in post.
Yeah, on the short. So it's in post. That's funny because I just had to do a run for my wife before coming here. So I'm a runner. I'm a runner on top of everything else.
30 years.
Yeah.
After film school,
well, it was on the way here. I had to do a thing. Just it's funny, and not to get into any details, but it's fascinating when you're shooting digital. There are a whole new. Don't think that shooting digital erases the problems of shooting on film. It doesn't. It brings a whole new set of problems. The run I had to make this morning is specific to shooting on digital, and it's fine. It'll all be fine. But if they had shot on film, probably would have taken longer to shoot. But this problem would exist.
One of those, yeah.
One of those.
Yeah. One thing takes the place of another thing.
Yeah.
What's funny is that all the things that remain the same, particularly on the sound side of the process.
Yeah.
How much of it just remains the same?
Absolutely.
Of what you have to do, and it's a lot of fun, but it's a ridiculous amount of work. You do not go into it lightly.
It's a process.
Yeah.
It is a process. I think when you sit there and you watch him, and it's funny too. Because this is the difference that I'm not going to name any names, but there are certain people that we're on a film week with who are strictly writers. They don't come from a filmmaking background, so they don't look at the process and see all of the difficulty in the film. And I'm always aware of that. I always think, what, did you really just sort of like dismiss this movie? I mean, I get it. It's not perfect, but they worked their asses off on this. Like, that is a really impressive effort. I got to give them an A for effort.
Yeah, and particularly, and you and I are the same because we're both, we studied making films. And it's sort of a thing that we do. Now, we've always brought that to our sort of film criticism process.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I can look at a movie and I think to myself, I know what it took to do, say, that scene.
Yeah.
I know what it took to do that scene. Bravo.
Yeah, exactly.
Bravo. This whole movie is not working.
Yeah.
But bravo, and I'm going to give you credit for that. And what would have been a B minus is now a B plus.
Because we sit there for 90 minutes, 120 minutes, 150 minutes, whatever it is, 180 minutes in the case of Avengers, and it's like a few hours, and then the people who made it spent months and years. And you kind of owe them something. You owe them some respect for that.
Yeah, and
just
acknowledgement of the things there. I get it that you're ordinary audience member, out there in Tacoma and St. Louis or wherever, may not be thinking about all that. Although, to be honest with you, Wade, I'm not sure that's true anymore. I think that the film audience has become much, much, much more sophisticated than it was
they are.
when we were young.
I hope so.
Younger. I think that they're thinking about, you know what, this is some good filmmaking. I think that they think about it and they care about it.
All right, well, we're gonna launch right into it and try to cover some good stuff. The anime keeps coming fast and furious. Huge market out there for anime, obviously. So we're gonna try to do right by all the people who love their anime. And even though, again, I am not a dyed-in-the-wool anime person. Got my favorites, Star Blazers and Space Cruiser Yamato and, Gotcha Man. And there are things that I grew up on and, Speed Racer and a lot of things that I like now, too.
I'm an Astro Boy.
There you go. But you know what? I do appreciate it. And I have gone through enough of a lot of this that I can make certain recommendations. So here's the thing. Kanamemo. This is from the Made in Japan collection through section 13. And Kanamemo is again, it is rooted in the whole Japanese youth culture thing. It skews younger, but it's actually it's more interesting than I expected it to be. It's about a 13-year-old girl who loses her grandmother and now has to sort of grow up faster and fend for herself. And it is a coming of age thing, but it's got it's got an interesting kind of sociological vibe to it, more so than I would have expected for something like this. It really touches a nerve that I think is more than just rooted in Japanese school culture and youth culture. And I think they may have kind of exceeded themselves unexpectedly on this. It's very funny, but it's also occasionally very, very touching. Kanamemo, the complete collection from Made in Japan. And skewing a little bit more tweaked is He Is My Master from Sente. That alone, just that title should kind of make you perk up. This does not skew young. This is a little bit twisted. I'm not sure how much of this I'm supposed to laugh at and take as satire or not. The tone kind of eludes me. But let's just say that it's about two runaway sisters who become maids, and they wear those little French maid outfits. And their boss, they have to call him master, and it gets really kind of fetish oriented. And I was very uncomfortable watching what I watched of this. It really is very fetishistic. It's not my speed. It's
they go there sometimes.
The Japanese do go there. They go there a lot, actually.
Yeah.
They don't. I don't request hentai for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there. Royal Space Force, The Wings of Hanamis. I'm sure I've mispronounced that. Also from Made in Japan. I believe we have talked about this previously. This was quite a big deal when it originally came out. It is really one of the more ambitious classic animes, and it's one of the earlier of the mecha one of the mecha epics, and it's really, really great. I think it's terrific. I think the animation, the artwork is it's a little bit raw, but it's intentionally raw. And but it established a certain look and a certain style for a lot of present day mecha. It's not. It's more rooted in reality. It's about the beginnings of. It's about kind of a rudimentary space flight program. It's like a fictionalized look at what an alternate space flight program would be in its early evolutionary stages, and that way it's able to sort of be rooted in what we have, but also put it into a different world and into a different science fiction environment. And it really is, it's very, very interesting. It's worth checking out if you've never seen it. Royal Space Force, The Wings of Hanamis, however you're supposed to pronounce it. I'm doing my best. Basquash with an exclamation point. It's one of those sports things. A lot of anime is rooted in sports stuff. This is from the people who did Macross, which I like a lot, and Bodacious Space Pirates, which I don't like too much. And basically, robot basketball in the future. That's what do you want? Basquash. It's robots playing basketball with people in the future, and there it is. It's not great. It's more for a very, very specific audience, and I'm not sure that's me. Shout and G-Kids have a great alliance going, and they're releasing a lot of great stuff. So all of the really great stuff that G-Kids picks up, at least on the anime end, is being released from Shout, and they're grabbing a lot of really, really top tier stuff. One of them is the Modest Heroes from the Ponoc Short Films Theater. This is from the people that did Mary and the Witch's Flower. And it's a collection of just very, very pastoral stories, short stories. So it's an anthology. It's an anime anthology, and they're all really, really good. They're all intriguing. They all have great characters, and it's a little Twilight Zone-y. It's like an anime Twilight Zone kind of, and it's really, really good. There's one about a kid and his mom and his allergy that's really, really kind of bizarre and fun all at the same time. It's really very clever. Hozuki's Coolheadedness. Where do they get these titles? Seriously, Hozuki's Coolheadedness. I'm sure there's a translation somewhere that makes sense to somebody. So anyway, this is a supernatural thing. The souls of the dead are being judged in hell, and Hozuki runs the whole operation and has a little horn on his head, and it's it's unusual. This is like a really tweaked Japanese mythological version of Dante's Inferno, with a lot of really cool animation and some really really weird creatures and some very very misplaced humor. It is this is the second season. I I don't recall ever having seen anything in the first season, though it's possible I could have, but this doesn't ring a bell. And you know what? It's really about being weird, and I guess on that account it works to some degree. Um, let's see here. We've got Mikagura School Suite, the complete series. This is from the Essentials line. And this is a high school story. It's more of that high school politics about a guy who gets a crush on the girl, and it has to do with what is he going to pick this? What high school is he going to pick? And it's all about kind of Japanese youth culture and in really mundane ways. Doesn't really work for me all that great. I got a thing called Sankaria, the complete series, also from the Essentials line. This is about somebody who, by the name of Furuya, and he wants to. He's kind of like a Dr. Frankenstein character. He's trying to figure out how to make his cat live again. His cat died, and he's trying to reanimate his cat and make a zombie cat. And there's a girl, and I don't want to tell you what happens to the girl, but the whole thing about the girl and him trying to reanimate the cat winds up taking a very weird turn with the girl, and it's very, very disturbing. And I'm not sure I'm quite on board with that either. Maria the Virgin Witch complete series. This is pretty cool. This is kind of a nice myth, has a little bit of a pseudo-religious angle to it, brings the Archangel Michael into it to clash with this young witch by the name of Maria, and it's a little bit Lord of the Ringsy, but not too much so. It's kind of a cool world that they create. Maria the Virgin Witch, that's the complete series. Sword of the Stranger. This is a movie. This is also part of the Essentials line, and this is from the Bones Studio, which is really really super cool. So this is about a guy battling Chinese assassins, which is always a thing in Chinese movies and in Japanese movies. They always make the other one the other. They're still feuding. But pretty great animation here. Pretty great action. Pretty great animation. And there's a nice, really a nice kind of accessible vibe. It's not overly mythological. Dances with Dragons complete series is very very Lord of the Ringsy. I'd almost say in some ways probably more Harry Pottery, but it's basically about a couple of magical bounty hunters. If that makes sense. A little hard to follow, but looks good. Golden Kamuy season 1 is a treasure map story. About a bunch of escaped convicts who are all trying to find the same treasure and trying to basically it's a mad world with badass anime dudes instead of anybody funny. Black Clover we've talked about before, season 1 part 4, that's out now if you want to keep following the Black Clover saga. The Absolute Duo complete series. This is also from the Essentials line. Not terribly interesting. This is about a school where like a supernatural. It's kind of Harry Pottery supernatural school where they learn special weaponry, but the weapons have a metaphysical connection to your eternal soul. So it's not quite clear what the rules are here. Things just kind of happen for no reason, and people have supremacy for no reason. Didn't quite follow the rules, but the Harry Potter aspect to it, the school politics, is par for the course with Japanese anime. Barakamon complete series, also from the Essentials line. We've talked about this before. Barakamon is great. You really want to check this out. This is just wonderful anime drama. The Ancient Magus's Bride Part 2. I believe we talked about part 1 as well some months ago, so that's out there. Dragon Ball Super Part 7. For the people that want, there's no reason to talk about Dragon Ball. That continues to go. Just a few more here. We have Space Battleship Tiramisu. That's right. soon to be followed by Space Battleship Pizza. Where do you come up with tiramisu? Yamato, come on. It doesn't make sense to me. This is season 1 plus the OVAs. It really, really does borrow a lot from Space Cruiser Yamato. Star Blazers borrows a lot from it. It looks good. It's much more up to date, but not as up to date as the new Yamato. So it kind of slots in there. I'm sure if you like the one, you'll probably like this one as well. I found it just a little bit too derivative, and it's tiramisu. How do I take that seriously? Hakyu Hoshin Engi, the complete series, is about a thing called the Hoshin Project, which is this secret operation to find X-Men type immortal people, and somewhere between like Men in Black and X-Men. Like if Men in Black were chasing the X-Men. Does that make sense? That's what this is. So that's what this is. And then it has a whole weird additional tangent to it that goes completely off the rails, but it's not bad for that moment. And then the last two, the Rolling Girls, complete season 1. This is also part of the Essentials line. And this is, I guess, kind of cute. It's about superhero girls and their various battles and intrigues, and it's got some interesting angles to it. As far as anime feminism is concerned. And then lastly, High School DxD Hero season 4 continues more of that stuff. That just I didn't even really bother with this one. This is kind of getting tiresome. But the High School DxD thing has a following, and I do not begrudge you your following. I might have a few more to jump into later, but I'll let you get going on some of this classic stuff. We got a lot of classic movies too. That are just
and I'm kind of bouncing around all over the stuff a little bit. So as you know, Shaft. Not long about a week ago, the Shaft came out.
Yep.
The original Shaft, of course, what is it, about 1970, 1971?
Something like that.
Like that. And then
71, I think
71.
It was.
Yeah. And then skip forward to John Singleton's Shaft, which I think was about the year 2000, maybe 2001 or something like that, starring Samuel L. Jackson. And Richard Roundtree was walking around in that Shaft back then. Funny thing about that Shaft, wasn't very good, and the only person whose career it actually helped was Jeffrey Wright, who played that little Puerto Rican gangster in that movie.
Yeah.
Christian Bale was meant to be the real sort of bad guy in that movie, but it just didn't sort of gel in that movie. But Jeffrey Wright came out of that movie looking pretty good. And then they did this recent Shaft, again, Samuel L. Jackson. Richard Roundtree, still in the movie, playing the original Shaft. And then there are 2 or 3 other Shafts. I don't know what the hell's going on with all that. I think it's his grandson.
There's too many Shafts.
Or something going on in the movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, here, the Warner Brother Archive Collection gives us the Shafts that have been forgotten. So 1972, Shaft's Big Score.
I love this movie, actually.
Also directed by Gordon Parks.
I think this is a really underrated movie.
Yeah,
I think it fell into the people just thought, back then people didn't respect sequels. And I honestly think this is a in many respects it's not better than the original Shaft, but it rivals it.
And it's a little bit more straight to the point movie, and it has less to do with quote unquote the man or anything like that. Moses Gunn in this movie. Shaft is it's a straight up revenge movie. Somebody kills his friend, and he's going to go and find out who did it and take care of that business, and he makes a few new friends. You got Moses Gunn in the film, which is really, really great. Love Moses
Gunn. Whatever happened to Moses Gunn?
I hope Moses is still around, but I'm not. We should look him up. Joe Santos in the movie. Used to love seeing Joe Santos walking around Kojak and all those detective shows back in the day. Julie Harris.
Moses Gunn passed in 1993.
Really? That long ago? Moses. Love me some Moses Gunn.
He wasn't around. I mean, he was born in 29, so that's. What is he in his 60s?
He was in his 60s when he passed.
Yeah. Gee whiz, that's really sad.
Neat. Anyway, so this is Shaft's Big Score, a brand new caper. Richard Roundtree reprising his role as Shaft. Ernest Tidyman wrote the script for this too. Ernest Tidyman wrote the book.
That's right.
It was for the original Shaft.
Joe Santos passed 2 years ago.
Oh,
3 years
Joe.
ago. 3 years ago.
Joe hung around for a while there.
Yeah,
That's way to go, Joe.
Yeah.
So that's 1972, and the other forgotten Shaft, of course, is Shaft in Africa.
Which is a little
1973,
silly, but enjoyably silly.
Yeah, kind of a nutty thing. I like the theme of it. Shaft goes to Africa to break up a slavery ring. That's shipping slaves off to Paris to work in these jails. This is directed by John Gillerman, which is a little weird to me.
That's partly why. Well, we should point out Gillerman was like the original cheesy action director before the official cheesy action directors of the 80s really came of age. You know, King Kong and the Towering
King Kong,
Inferno,
the 1979 one with Jessica Lange and all that kind of stuff. That was Gillerman.
Yeah.
The Max going all the way by George Papard and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little weird that John Gillerman's on this, but I love this tagline though: "The brother in the motherland." You gotta love it.
That's
Again,
so fun.
Richard Roundtree in the movie. Along with some really, really great, wonderful faces from back in the day, Vanetta McKee and all those sort of folks who hung around for a really long time. So a whole lot of Shaft, new Shaft still going. Who would have thought? 45 years of Shaft, some 6 films. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? Not me, not in a million years. Lady Scarface was a fairly wicked sort of gangster movie from the classic gangster movie period. Kind of neat in that, it's Lady Scarface. The movie is about this cop who's on the heels of this ring that pulls off this heist in Chicago and then hightails it back to New York. He follows them to New York. He has some information about the leader of this gangster group. The one thing he knows is that this leader has a scar. He does not know that the leader is a woman, and that's what makes this wicked little gangster movie kind of interesting. Dennis O'Keefe plays the cop. Judith Anderson plays Slade. That's the only thing he knows. He knows that the name of the leader of that gang is Slade, and that they have a scar. It's a really, really interesting, wicked little movie from that period, which I imagine if you are sort of into noir, as we are, you would thoroughly enjoy. RKO pictures back in the day, gorgeous black and white photography. Gorilla Man, love this also from Warner Brothers. Neat John Loder and Ruth Ford film. It's set during the war. You have a commando, so that kind of a gorilla, but in this case, that's not what it's really referring to. That's why it has an O in the title. And the reason why they call him the Gorilla Man is because he's known from being able to climb and grapple and get over things. So they call him Gorilla Man. They should have used the one with the U, but what the hell? It doesn't make any difference. Anyway, he gets caught, and he goes to a sanitarium on the south coast of England. What he does not know is that this sanitarium is actually a nest of Nazi spies. They extricate from him information about what he's supposed to do, but they send some troops out there to do some crimes. He gets accused of doing these crimes, so he's not able to deliver his information to HQ, to command. It's a really sort of intense and stirring little movie I rather enjoyed. Gorilla Man, D. Ross Lederman directed that. I wish they would put a little bit in the way by way of special features on these Warner Brother releases. It would be neat if they, a historian or something like that, to sort of bring us up to date on what happened behind the scenes of the film, stuff like that. From the Cohen Film Collection, I thoroughly enjoyed this Joan Micklin Silver film from 1977, Between the Lines. It was right after her big film Hester Street. And it really is a neat little movie. Jeff Goldblum in this movie, John Hurd in this movie, Lindsay Krause, Jill Eikenberry, who would be on L.A. Law a few years later, Bruno Kirby. So all of these sort of wonderful actors who were roaming around these sort of neat little independent films that were happening at that time. And there's sort of women directors. You had Joan coming along. You had Susan Seidelman coming along. You had a sort of interesting group of female writer-directors making these very interesting independent films set in the real world. This one is set at like a little newspaper, sort of like the Village Voice, or here we had the L.A. Weekly. And you have all these writers. Jeff Goldblum is the music writer, and he uses all his ability to get tickets and whatnot to get dates. And you have John Hurd in the film, who's the news reporter, and Lindsay Goldblum, who's like the chief photographer. And you just roam around this newsroom, and with these people, these are talky movies. With smart people having interesting conversations about the world they live in and about their relationships and how they're getting along and what's going on. I love movies like this. You don't see a lot of movies like this anymore, although we have been talking about how there is something of a renaissance of the independent film out there again, which is sort of interesting. Anyway, Between the Lines, Joan Micklin Silver film, out by Cohen Media Film Classics. A little bit of information in terms of special features. You have an interview with the director, Joan Micklin Silver, the original trailer, and a few other things. So neat little movie from 1977. Gonna knock off
All
a few
right,
more of those.
yeah. You know what? I got 4 more anime that I'm gonna put a plug in for. The first one is trust me, you're gonna want to kind of hang around for this. This is Basilisk Part 1, the Ouka Ninja Scrolls. Now this is based on a manga series. It's if you're into Ninja Scroll, the original Ninja Scroll, and the world that created and everything related to it, which is very bloody but very intensely animated and very colorful and dark and rich and very kind of rooted in all of that Japanese feudal mythology. You will find a lot to appreciate here. If you're not, stick with it because there's actually more here than meets the eye. So this is based on a manga series that was quite famous like 15 some odd years ago, and that itself was based on an old novel, a Japanese novel from the 1950s. And so the anime really pays honor to both of it, and it all takes place in the 17th century with these two feuding ninja clans to decide which one of them will basically birth the next shogun. And it's very Shakespearean. That's what really makes this interesting. But you got to stick with it for a little bit. It takes probably about 6 or 7 episodes before it all kind of sort of starts to gel and you really get with it. Otherwise, it can be very confusing and kind of hard to follow, and the animation is very, very aggressive. But it's really worth sticking with. That is Basilisk, the Ouka Ninja Scrolls, Part 1. Stick with it. It really is. It's a worthwhile investment. We got Chaos Dragon, the complete series. And this is also from Funimation. These are all still Funimation. And this is based on a role-playing game that I've never played.
Yeah.
I played other role-playing games. But anyway, this is Chaos Dragon, which ran about 4 years ago. And this takes place in the far, far distant future. And it's about a couple of countries that obviously don't exist right now that are at war and trying to become supreme. And it really does feel like a role-playing game elevated to anime. It's very nicely animated, very colorful, very engaging characters. The future mythology of it, and what these things usually do is they push it far enough into the future that you can sort of pretend that it's like you can get away with anything at that point. Magic and everything else is all perfectly real, but you can still be sort of ancient and medieval about it. Anyway. Chaos Dragon, part of the Essentials line. It's nice to look at if nothing else. Castletown Dandelion is also very, very entertaining and enjoyable. This is about the Sakurada family, who are I don't want to call them. I hope that most Japanese families are not necessarily like this. It's very, very, it's super traditional and patriarchal in many, many respects, and to a point where they're Japanese royalty. And there are superpowers involved here, and it's not worth giving a whole lot away, but it's a fascinating family. Let's just put it like that. If I had a family like this, I'd be both terrified and elated. So that's Castletown Dandelion. A lot of entertaining surprises there. And then lastly is Sky Wizards Academy, which again goes into kind of a Harry Potter-ish direction, but it's got some really, really fun characters in it. This is based on a light novel series, and this is about a bunch of these insects that have chased humanity away, all kind of Starship Trooper style. And the insects live in these big, giant skyborn cities. And wizards are the ones who have to do these. They attack the insects in these really, really elaborate, amazing kind of aerial combat. Like it's dogfighting. It's like Star Wars and World War I dogfighting.
Wow.
But except they're sky wizards and they're fighting insects, and that's what it is. And you got to learn how to do it. And the kids are really cool, and everything about this is really cool. So it's a little bit of Harry Potter meets how to do this. Let's see. Harry Potter meets Star Wars meets Starship Troopers.
Yeah, I love it.
Can we do that?
I love
Can
it.
I get away with
Hey,
that?
frankly, if they hadn't
right.
done it, I'd have suggested that we do
Sky
it.
Wizards Academy, the complete series from Funimation.
A few
There it
more?
is. Yeah. Let's hit some stuff there.
This is an interesting movie by a friend of ours, Rod Lurie, 2007 film Resurrecting the Champ, with Samuel L. Jackson and Josh Hartnett, kind of loosely based on the true story of an LA Times article. There was a period there when anybody wrote an article in the LA Times that got made into a movie. And this was one of them. Although it was an interesting thing. Samuel Jackson plays a homeless man living on the street. Josh Hartnett, an up and coming sports reporter looking for one of those great stories. He finds this guy that used to be a championship boxer, and he sort of learns about his life and about his rise to fame and his ultimate fall to where he is now. And he does, in fact, become noted for that story, but it only makes the old champ's boxer's life worse. So he has to figure out something there. An interesting story, well directed by Rod. I rather enjoyed it. Special features include an audio commentary with the director, our friend Rod Lurie, and some behind-the-scenes footage and featurettes and whatnot. A neat, underappreciated movie, Resurrecting the Champ, by Rod Lurie, Samuel Jackson there. FM. I remember going to see this movie in 1978 when it came out.
I can't believe it's that old.
It was 1980, this, and then I think a year later, TGI Friday. It was like a whole little run of these movies that were all, to one extent or another, sort of wacky.
I can't believe that movie. It's as old as Star Wars almost.
Oh yeah, 1978. 41 years. So anyway, this is a movie about directed by John A. Alonzo, who's of course the cinematographer and actor. John was in Chinatown and a bunch of stuff. You would roam around his movies. Knocked out one or two as a director, including this one, which is about an FM radio station that rebels. All the DJs from this hip-happening 70s style FM radio station rebel when the station starts running more and more commercials, and specifically because they start running. Now, remember, the thing is, they start running Army recruiting commercials in the movie, and that was the thing that set most of the sort of hip and happening DJs off. They didn't want to work on a radio station that was running Army. Today, none of this could possibly be even conceived as a notion for a movie, but in 1978, we're only 3 years off of the end of the Vietnam War. So that would have been a very, very potent sort of subject matter for a movie. Alex Karras in the film, the wonderful Cleavon Little in the film, Martin Mull in the film, Norman Lloyd in the film. It just goes on and on and on. It's a really, really funny, silly movie from back in the day, directed by John Alonzo. Let's see. Oh, I remember this absolutely extraordinary Sidney Poitier film from 1965, A Patch of Blue.
Oh, it's such a good film. Shelley Winters won an Oscar for this.
Shelley Winters won an Oscar. She plays the
did.
mom of this young blind girl.
Great.
She's like this hooker mom who blinded her daughter when she was like 5. 13, 14 years later, it's set in Los Angeles. 13, 14 years later, you have this young blind woman who's more or less trapped up in her house. And this young black man who comes into her life and decides to take her out into the world. Sidney Poitier. Sidney made a few of these films over that period from the middle 50s, Lilies of the Field, and one or two more before he sort of slipped off into the films that he's more well known for, those sort of late 60s film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and then In the Heat of the Night, and They Call Me Mr. Tibbs, and all that kind of stuff. So this was a period when Sidney was more or less, well, not, I was about to say the lone black actor, but that's not true. Ossie Davis was around, Harry Belafonte was around, but Sidney was occupying this very particular space where he would play these characters in these movies, and the issue of his race was not really very prominent in the storyline. The fact that Sidney is this black man wandering around L.A. with this young, blind, white girl and engaging with her prostitute mom, played by Shelley Winters, that doesn't really come up in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, that's not the issue of the movie. The issue is how this girl is gonna lead her life, and it's really, really lovely. Special features include a commentary by Guy Green, the director Guy Green, and
Guy Green's such a good director,
such a wonderful director, and a featurette, A Cinderella Named Elizabeth, which is all about the little girl from the Warner Brothers. A Patch of Blue, wonderful, wonderful movie. Elizabeth Hartman is who played the young woman.
Let me do a couple of DVDs here real
Knock
quickly
those
just to get these out of the way here. So some of you may not realize that Ron Howard, known primarily as a director of a Han Solo movie now, apparently.
So
It's weird, right? Ron Howard once played Huckleberry Finn.
mhm.
That's right. Yes, he did. And kind of a weird Huckleberry Finn. Like I would cast Ron Howard as Tom Sawyer, but not Huck Finn.
Yeah.
Not Huck Finn.
Doesn't have the edge.
No,
Hope he doesn't have the edge.
for sure. But anyway,
Ron is a really good actor. Just saw him in The Shootist yesterday. It's running on.
Oh, he's great.
Ron was really good in The Shootist.
He's really good
You
in
know.
The Shootist.
Yeah.
Terrific. Opposite John Wayne.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? There's your connection right there.
Right there.
Ron Howard. I mean, Ron Howard's dad was, a legend too.
Rance.
But Rance, yeah. But Ron Howard, the guy who directed Solo, once acted opposite a man who was directed by John Ford
Yeah.
in 1939.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still have roots.
Yeah.
We still have
They're
the few
there.
degrees of separation to
Yeah.
all that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a 1977 television production. I believe it was television. Might not have been. Anyway, it's 1975. Very short, 77 minutes long. You know who plays Tom Sawyer in this? This is what's hysterical. Donnie Most.
Donnie Most.
It's brilliant.
Wait a minute. So this is 77. So I mean, him and Donnie had worked in on Happy Days already.
Yeah.
So Ron got Donnie the job playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Way to
Right.
go. Way to go. Way to go.
How silly is that? So anyway,
That's
but
a
yeah.
buddy right there.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, this was I'm almost 99% certain I saw this on television. But so it's a TV movie, and it certainly feels like a TV movie. Rance Howard is in it. Actually plays Huck Finn's dad, so he's pulling in all the favors. And meanwhile, as this is 1977, guess who plays Jim? Who is
Lou Gossett?
No.
No?
Who's been on television on a weekly basis like everybody else that you're going to recognize, also on ABC in 1970s? What black actor?
Who is it?
Huggy Bear.
Oh, Antonio Fargas, who is in a film that I wrote that came out in 2008.
There
He
you go.
plays Floppy.
That's right.
He plays
Yeah.
in that movie I wrote, Bad Guys. 1 degree of separation.
There it
folks.
is. There it is.
1 degree of separation.
So, look, there's a picture. Look, there he is, right there. How
And he looks
fantastic
the
is that?
same in 77 as he
As he
did in
does now.
2008. And I saw
As
him
he does
about
now.
3 weeks ago, and he looks exactly the same.
Sure does.
He's the Dick Clark of
He really is.
character actors.
So anyway, there's and Clint Howard, of course, shows up in this
Of
too.
course he does.
Look, I mean,
Is his
and-
mom in there? His
Yes.
mom was in the. Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
she's in it too. She's in it too. So pretty much, everybody, he just pulls in all the favors. Is it any good? No, not really.
But
It's not. But who cares? It's a total bunch of ABC television kitsch from 1977.
Oh, Antonio Fargas.
This is 1001 Nights, the story of Aladdin and 8 magical tales, which Mill Creek got out in a hurry because the live action Aladdin is now in theaters and pretty much played out. But anyway, they went and pulled together a whole bunch of different movies that were just been made over the years that all have some kind of Aladdin connection. There's 1001 Nights, which was an old movie with Cornell Wilde and Phil Silvers of all people. It's absolutely ridiculous. 1001 Arabian Nights with Jim Backus and Dwayne Hickman. The Magic Carpet with Lucille Ball. Arabian Nights miniseries, which had Jason Scott Lee and John Leguizamo. That was, I think, the late 90s. And lastly, Aladdin the Musical with Barry Bostwick and Richard Kiley. All of this stuff is kitsch, but it shows you how much you can squeeze out of a very, very simple and mythical tale, and you can squeeze quite a lot. Anyway, there are a few cartoons on here as well, and including Popeye Meets Aladdin and His Wonderful Lamp, which is probably the best thing on here. But regardless, if you got a yen for Aladdin, if the movie's got your juices flowing and it's not enough, and you got a kid who wants to see more Aladdin like I do, knock yourselves out. You're
How
getting
did
it
Aladdin do? Did it do okay?
I haven't looked. I
Yeah.
haven't really paid attention. I'm still. All I'm looking at is to see Avengers as it inches closer and closer and closer to Avatar. It's now about $42 million away.
And they're putting out. They're going to release an Avenger with another 10 or 15 minutes worth of.
So they're re-releasing it this weekend, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more screens they're putting it in. I assume they're gonna snatch at least 1,000 new screens because Disney is a predator that way.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They saw very quickly. Now that they own Fox, that Dark Phoenix is tanking. Those screens need to be available for Lion King.
Yeah.
So Disney is thinking, okay, let's just cut our losses with Dark Phoenix, throw Avengers Endgame back in there, which will probably outperform Dark Phoenix even at this late date. It'll get more people in there. And we'll hold those screens for Lion King, and then no other studio is going to be able to grab them. Plus, Men in Black International is tanking.
It's tanking, yeah.
So they can grab those screens, too. So Disney's just holding on to screens and keeping exhibitors happy is what's going on. And exhibitors are happy to get Endgame back in there. You kidding me?
Particularly, they do something sort of tricky, like, you put 10 minutes in.
And that's what they're doing.
Like
There's going to be a deleted scene and some they're like and some other stuff at the end. So they just, they're just slapping some Easter eggs on there.
Yeah. Couple of these real quick.
Yeah.
The Prisoner of Second Avenue is a film that I just absolutely love. Melvin Frank directed the Neil Simon play. The film more or less plays exactly like the play because we're mostly in that high-rise apartment in Manhattan with Jack Lemmon and Anne Bancroft just going completely bananas. It's just a story about a guy who loses his job, a mid-level executive who loses his job, has a bit of a nervous breakdown. The story is set contemporary to the time, 1975. So it's kind of like a big deal. And it's just this funny play about this husband and wife and what they go through as he's going through a sort of midlife crisis. She gets a job, she loses her job. You have the neighbors and all that kind of stuff. Again, this isn't the kind of movie that you see a lot anymore, that gets made anymore. Gene Saks in the movie. You have the wonderful Ed Peck in the movie. It's just the funniest thing you ever did see. M. Emmett Walsh and F. Murray Abraham in this movie I had forgotten about. So it's really a neat movie. Mel Frank's adaptation of Neil Simon's The Prisoner of Second Avenue. Anne Bancroft then directs a wonderful movie called Fatso in 1980. So Anne Bancroft plays the wife in The Prisoner of Second Avenue. A couple of years later, one of her early directing efforts, she's working with Dom DeLuise, 1980, directing a wonderful movie, this really poignant and sweet movie.
Love this movie.
Called Fatso.
Love this movie.
Dom DeLuise, of course, a big guy all his entire life.
Oh, yeah.
Across his career. Good friend of Burt Reynolds. Him and Burt made some wonderful movies together.
And if you ever saw Dom DeLuise, and my wife went to school with one of the DeLuise kids. I know other people who, I know
Peter
people
DeLuise.
Peter's. He's been all over the place. So, everyone in LA has some connection to Dom DeLuise somehow. A friend of mine made a movie. I went to it was a little independent thing. Went to the premiere. Dom DeLuise was there. Dom was everywhere at some point. You couldn't escape him. And Dom was not just overweight. Dom was enormous.
Yeah.
You have to understand just how obese he was for most of his life. And the thing was, when you saw him struggling to walk and all that, it was really, really tragic.
Yeah.
And yet he had no trouble asking us to laugh at his disability on screen. That's why this movie is so poignant.
It's sweet. The very poster of the film, him with that one tear in his eye, and it's a beautiful movie. He has his friend passes away, and the whole movie is about this guy who goes on this bender to try to lose weight.
Yeah.
Which of course is a thing that he struggled with his whole
life.
And wonderful work by Anne Bancroft as a director.
Fantastic.
Beautifully made film.
Yep.
You got one?
Yeah, I got a few older ones here. So here's a blast from the past. 1993, Slaughter of the Innocents with Scott Glenn. So James Glickenhaus, who wrote and directed this and is B-movie guy. He plied his trade at the time, doing pretty much straight to video kind of stuff. Real solid B-movie guy though. This is obviously something that comes in the wake of Silence of the Lambs. And in the same mixes in the moment with Seven, and when serial killer movies were kind of becoming a thing again, thanks to Silence of the Lambs, and so you got Scott Glenn, who was in Silence of the Lambs, incidentally, playing an FBI agent who has to go one-on-one with a a serial killer who preys on children, and it winds up getting personal at a certain point, as it which echoes what happens in Seven as well with Brad Pitt, and it doesn't go anywhere new, but for what it is, which is a B movie knockoff, it's definitely top flight. And most of that has to do with the fact that Glickenhaus totally knows what he's doing, and Scott Glenn is a hell of an actor. He's a hell of a great actor. So, yeah, it's worth checking out. This is from Synapse Films. Comes on Blu-ray, and it has all the old archival EPK stuff on it, the interviews with Glickenhaus and Scott Glenn, and there's even a few new featurettes that they went and put together with this. And Glickenhaus does a really, really cool audio commentary. He's very much in the John Badham school of, you know what? It's a job, folks.
Yeah, yeah. Journeyman director guys.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then we got a couple from the early 2000s. Winter Passing just kind of evaporated. That went completely off the grid. This is from MVD. It's on Blu-ray. And this was one of those Yari Film Group movies before Yari Film Group evaporated. This is from director Adam Rapp. And it's a very eccentric story. Zooey Deschanel is this girl who's sort of, for all kinds of reasons I can't get into, trying to sort of reconnect with her dysfunctional family. Ed Harris plays her dad. Her mom is passed. Her dad is a famous figure for a certain reason. The love letters between the parents are being sought for sale. Essentially, it's just a weird collection of characters. Will Ferrell in a totally unusual part where he's being eccentric, but not funny eccentric, like scary eccentric. Amelia Warner is also very, very good. Zooey Deschanel, obviously a much younger performance for her, and she's very, very solid. Adam Rapp wrote and directed it. Haven't seen much from him lately, but this was back in the 90s when you could do a cool, funky indie like this.
Yeah.
And speaking of funky indies, man, this is one that I could totally forgotten existed. Beer League from this must have been 93. Is this no or not 90, like 2006? Yeah, 2006. The other was 93. 2006. So Artie Lang and Ralph Macchio made a movie together. How weird is that? So Artie Lang, who is a pretty raw comic, goes out there and talks about all of his obesity and his coke use and his heroin addiction and every I mean he lets his vices hang out. He really does. Yeah. And I guess that's how he copes. But he's not an easy guy to wrap yourself around. Artie Lang is not easily likable in movies, and he's not easily likable here. He's a bum. He's a vagrant. Lives with his mom, played by Laurie Metcalf. He's got no job, and he's pretty much the worst human being in the world. And now you've got one of these situations where his local bar is going to get kicked out of its beer league unless they defeat the champions. And the only way to do that is to make sure that obviously you're good enough, but you also have to, it's the Bad News Bears with a much less likable bunch of people. I guess it wants to be a Caddyshack, not really a Caddyshack for beer league baseball, but that's what it's aspiring to do. Ralph Macchio's kind of wasted in this thing, but the one thing that is enjoyable is Seymour Cassell, who just somehow always shows up and nails it. A few other cameos in here from that aren't really worth mentioning, but anyway, it's Beer League with Artie Lang and Ralph Macchio, and boy, was that a weird thing to see show up on the grid.
Dude, it's the 25th anniversary of Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump.
I don't even want to know that.
Oh, it's just
I don't want to know
I
that.
mean, that's wonderful, but it's horrible, but it's wonderful. Anyway, newly remastered to Blu-ray. 3 hours of special features. Robert Zemeckis' film. Winston Groom's novel. Eric Roth's screenplay.
Forrest Gump is as old.
1994. Yeah.
Forrest Gump is as old to us now as Easy Rider was when Forrest Gump came out.
Yeah, man. It's
wrong, man.
50.
It's wrong.
Tom Hanks with a chin. Fantastic film, of course. Wonderful executed. I always thought it was funny that Sally Field was only about 3 or 4 years older than Tom Hanks playing his mother in this movie.
Yeah. But see, that's also the fun thing in The Graduate, too.
Yeah.
Is that Anne Bancroft
again
is not that much older than
Dustin
Hoffman.
So those guys are getting away with it. The Bostonians, one of the most
Oh, I love this
wonderful
movie.
James Ivory films. I love
Yeah.
that it's set in the South. I think it's set in Mississippi, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeves, and this absolutely beautiful story about this young woman who's a bit of a suffragette, and these two men who vie for her
Yeah.
affections. One of them
Classic Henry James
classic Henry James stuff. A beautiful, beautiful movie. Not often remembered when we talk about the canon of James Ivory. We talk about the remains of the day and some of the wonderful James Ivory films. We sometimes forget about this film, which of course, male lead, the wonderful Christopher Reeves, in this film. Which, in 1984, Christopher had been running around in that Superman suit for a while. And it was a wonderful thing to see him in this wonderful movie, a rare movie from James Ivory there. How to Stuff a Wild Bikini, 1965. Dude, growing up in the late 60s, early 70s, I every time this came on television, I would sit there and watch it as if I had never seen it before. It's just nuts. A William Asher film. William directed a whole bunch of those wacky beach blanket bingo type movies back there with Funicello
but they're all fun.
They're all a lot of fun. Love this. How to Stuff a Wild Bikini. And you got one more over there?
Yeah, I got a few creepy things, creepy movies. Let me knock these off. So, creepy and horror things. This is so weird. Shout Factory and Scream Factory. They find they really do dig up the best cult stuff. This is the new collector's edition of Night of the Creeps from 1986, which came first, Night of the Creeps or Creep Show? Do we remember? Creep Show came first.
Creep Show must have come first.
I'm pretty sure
Creep Show
came
Creep Show would have been in the 70s.
Creep Show, I think, was about 82, 83, maybe. Let me look that up.
I'm thinking of Creep Show
because Creep Show is of Stephen
when
King.
that movie came.
Yeah, hold on. Hey, hang on. I should have checked this out before the show. We're not that professional.
That's an interesting question.
Creep Show was 1982.
82. Okay.
82. Yeah. So Night of the Creeps comes out on the heels of Creep Show, and of course the way that they write the graphics for Creeps is meant to sort of evoke Creep Show. It definitely means to reference it. But Night of the Creeps is fun all on its own. It's a completely wacky, bonkers plot written and directed by Fred Decker, who's another one of those B-movie guys who was just killing it in the 80s. And this was an early TriStar production too. So basically, the aliens are doing something messed up in 1950s, and their messed up stuff winds up infecting this college student. And then in the present day, which it is now the 80s, once we get to the 80s, we flash forward to the 80s, and there are some fraternity guys who find his frozen body, the infected frozen body of this alien disease infected guy, and they thaw it out, and suddenly you basically have the entire campus is like zombie central.
I love
That's it. The whole thing. It's the most roundabout way of justifying a zombie outbreak. It really is. It's ridiculous. The plot is so completely bananas. It's hysterical. And the effects are cheesy, and the acting is really bad, and it's just brilliant. It's absolutely wonderful. All new interviews with people who were in it. There's a new episode of Horror's Hallowed Grounds on this. There's a Fred Decker commentary, which is pretty fun. Commentary with the cast, which is probably a little bit less fun. They kind of ramble a little bit, but it's okay. Deleted scenes, featurettes, more than you'd ever want for a movie of this type. We also have Leprechaun Returns. And let me tell you, you don't want Leprechaun returning. The original Leprechaun is a horrible film, and for some reason, it was successful enough that they went and had.
They made a few sequels of those movies.
Yeah, well, this is from last year.
I know.
I don't know. I don't know why
30 years now.
I don't know why we needed a Leprechaun sequel last year, but there we got it. So naturally, he wants his pot of gold, except this time it's underneath the sorority. It writes itself.
Yeah.
Good grief. Anyway, it's a gore movie that isn't really scary, and the plot is ridiculous. Here's a really fascinating blast from the past. 1987, John Schlesinger directed The Believers. It's not a very John Schlesinger movie. it's basically just a straightforward, creepy thriller. Kind of one of those supernatural thrillers that deals with occultism and cults and witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. And Martin Sheen is the guy who is caught in the middle of it along with Helen Shaver. It's a little gory. It's a little nasty. There's a scene where like a boil bursts open and spiders crawl out. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in a movie. Very unusual thing for Schlesinger to do. It's like why would the guy who did Midnight Cowboy and Cold Comfort Farm make this movie? I guess because it was a payday.
Yeah, mortgage payment.
Anyway, it has kind of a following, perhaps mainly because it was based on the Nicholas Conde novel, The Religion, which has a certain following as well. And it was written, the screenplay adaptation was written by Mark Frost, who of course co-created Twin Peaks with David Lynch. So, I mean, there is a pedigree here, and Martin Sheen is very, very good in it, but it is definitely a weird one from the 80s. It is a very strange collection of talent in a movie you would not normally expect. That's on Blu-ray from Olive, and pretty good transfer, pretty decent transfer. And then the last one here is Volume 2 of the American Horror Project from Arrow, which is not as strong as Volume 1, but it does have three interesting films that horror fans, horror historians will probably appreciate. Dream No Evil, Dark August, and The Child, all of which are significant for all kinds of reasons, but really specifically to horror fans. They're all 2K restorations. They're all done really well. They all come with really, really great extras, especially Dream No Evil, which has Hollywood After Dark, the early films of John Hayes, which is quite interesting, and an audio commentary with Kat Ellinger and Sam Dayan. But otherwise, this is strictly for people who are really, really aficionados of these films and the era in which they were birthed. Dream No Evil, Dark August, and The Child.
Good stuff. Carol Reed, of course, the third man, Carol Reed.
And Oliver.
And sort of redefined the thriller. A little bit later, he made this wonderful little thriller called The Running Man. Nothing to do with that thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1963. Lawrence Harvey, Lee Remick, Alan Bates in this film. Basically, it's about a guy who fakes his death and moves to Spain, brings his wife there, and then they intend to live out their life. He has a grudge against the company, and then the insurance investigator, played by Alan Bates, shows up. It's an intense, wicked little film, widescreen and in color. So the exact opposite of what Carol Reed had been doing previously. This special edition includes all kinds of fantastic restoration stuff, high definition restoration, isolated music scores, really, really neat stuff. So this is a very, very good Carol Reed film. Lawrence Harvey, Lee Remick from 1963. Check it out if you get a chance. Midnight Lights from 1960, Doris Day film. Lost Doris not too long ago. A few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago. This is an underrated Doris Day film. Basically, it's one of those gaslighting films. An American goes to London. She's recently married. She feels like she's being stalked. She goes to the authorities. Her husband, nobody believes her. She thinks she's going crazy. It's an intense, well-done little film with Rex Harrison and John Gavin and Myrna Loy and Roddy McDowall and Natasha Perry. And this is just, it's just an underrated Doris Day film. She was doing a lot of singing in movies back then. But this, I think, is one of the better ones we didn't get a chance to talk about recently when she passed. So this is Midnight Lace. Special features include a commentary by film historian Kat Ellinger and the theatrical trailer. And I have this film called Double Face, Ricardo Frida film with Klaus Kinski. This is just this horribly homophobic film about this millionaire whose lesbian wife sets him up for a murder. It's just an incredibly homophobic Italian film, and don't watch it. Mind Warp. This is a double bill, sci-fi double feature here. Mind Warp and Brain Scan, which are actually pretty neat films. Mind Warp from 1992, Brain Scan from 1994. Neat thing about Brain Scan is Edward Furlong and Frank Langella, and Edward Furlong was sort of just coming off of those that Terminator film, that T2 film back then. So he was having a little moment in his life. And Frank Langella, love me some Frank Langella, really can't go wrong with him. Mind Warp from 1992, Bruce Campbell in the film. Love me some Bruce Campbell, of course, Evil Dead and all of those movies. And back in the day, Bruce was still looking pretty good, going around movies, knocking people out. It was a post-apocalyptic film. It's set in this sort of VR world where people can kill each other by playing these games. Neat stuff from 1972. Mind Warp and Brain Scan.
I got just a few here to wrap things out. I'll save the best for last. The Big White is a movie I had totally forgotten about. This is so unusual. This is from 2005. This is a Robin Williams movie where you remember this?
Yes.
He's this guy in Alaska, and he tries to pull this insurance scam, which involves his brother, played by Woody Harrelson. And I won't tell you exactly what the scam is because it's so far-fetched, and yet at the same time, it feels a little Fargo-like.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of where this goes, and maybe it's because of all the snow. But
Giovanni Ribisi.
It's really Giovanni Ribisi, Holly Hunter, Tim Blake Nelson, Alison Lohman. It's a good cast. It's a really good cast. Directed by Mark Malou. Malou. It's such an unusual movie. I remember this coming out, and it came and went. I think because people didn't quite know what to make of it. But boy, Mylod, I guess is the director's name. Mylod, Mylod. Anyway, don't know how to pronounce that name, but. It really is an unusual movie. It has a very strange tone. You're not quite sure when you're supposed to laugh and when not. So it does share that with Fargo. But it's a great cast, and it's in the wake of Robin Williams passing, it might be worth rediscovering because it's a very, very solid performance. Around about the time that Christopher Nolan made The Prestige, there was another movie out that was basically the same plot, but better, believe it or not. The Prestige did play some gimmicks that I thought were pretty obvious. But Neil Burger's The Illusionist got overshadowed, and it shouldn't have been. This also stars Jessica Biel and Paul Giamatti, and it's out on Blu-ray now from MVD. And you really should check it out. It's the same general idea. But
Turn of the century magicians.
Turn of the century magicians, and is it or is it not magic, and what you are expected to use your magic for, and how anyway, and in a thriller environment, a thriller plot. But Paul Giamatti as the inspector who's investigating the crime, very kind of. I guess an Agatha Christie type investigator in many respects. It's a fascinating piece, and it really didn't get enough credit at the time, and I hope more people rediscover it now. Definitely worth checking out. And then lastly, got a couple of Criterions and a Disney. I'll save the Disney for last. The two Criterions are both fantastic. Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Oh, my
from
God.
John Cameron Mitchell gets the Criterion treatment, the director-approved treatment, and what a great movie. This movie was made for next to no money in 2001. John Cameron Mitchell got the New Generation Award from our LA Film Critics. Ray gave a wonderful speech presenting him that award.
Green,
we all sat at the same table.
Back in 2001.
2001. Such a great guy, John Cameron Mitchell. Such a sweet man. And of course, Hedwig and the Angry Inch was a big underground stage thing, which John Cameron Mitchell wanted to do because it tied it in with a lot of Fassbinder themes, and so it really is. It's a very Fassbinder-y movie. He and Stephen Trask both kind of found common ground on that, and Stephen Trask, who of course wrote the music and lyrics. It's a great movie. It's just a great movie. Tough to watch, because it's got a whole transsexualism theme to it that is very, very difficult to deal with in many respects, what the character goes through. But such an imaginative movie made for almost no money, and they do such a great job. Heaps of extras here. I won't even get into it. It's just tons of extras. And the best is a new conversation that they have with the cast and crew, where they just are clearly so awestruck and grateful to have been part of it. It's beautiful, beautiful movie, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And then the other one is the brand new. This was released in theaters as well. The brand new, sparkling, impeccable-looking, 422-minute War and Peace, Sergei Bondarchuk's 1966 epic, which has been out twice previously on DVD. You should just discard those because this Blu-ray absolutely blows them out of the water. They restored the film. They did everything right. I've seen this in the theater.
It's an 8 hour.
It's an 8 hour epic. I saw it with a lunch and a dinner break at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, and I'll tell you, I've never seen this movie look this beautiful. It is absolutely spectacular. New interviews with the cinematographer, and with Bondarchuk's son, Fedor Bondarchuk. There are 2 documentaries in here, both from the 60s. There's a television show from 67 about the actor Ludmila Savelyeva. And there's just a whole bunch of other stuff. It's great. The film itself is a stunning epic. It's a perfect adaptation. It's a little groovy in places, as you would expect from the 60s. But all the extras are there.
Well,
this is why the Soviet Union went bankrupt.
Yeah.
They made this movie. This was made for $100 million in 1966.
Yeah.
It would be like $500 million today. They've got like 10,000 people. They restage entire battle scenes. It's extraordinary. It's a really amazing. And then we're going out with this. Disney has re-released Cinderella in an anniversary Blu-ray edition. The difference primarily is it looks better than the previous Blu-ray, and it has the Movies Anywhere code. So Cinderella, let me just point this out. Cinderella is one of those movies. I've got all the princess movies that I can on Movies Anywhere and on Vudu, so that when my daughter says I want to watch, I just throw it up. I don't have to get a disc. Cinderella, I've been having to get the damn disc. Got to get the damn disc for Cinderella. I'm tired of getting the disc. Movies Anywhere, thank you. Now I get Cinderella Movies Anywhere. Boom. Don't have to get the damn disc anymore. But if I need it, I got it.
Yes.
So got the Blu-ray, and this is so welcome. This of course they brag it's part of the National Film Registry.
Yes.
I got some things to say about that soon too.
Yeah.
But anyway, lots of other stuff on here. You can watch the original theatrical version, or you can watch the in Walt's words, the envisioning of Cinderella version of it, which is quite interesting. It's an alternate way of watching that really mainly for adults to make it more interesting.
It's about perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's more featurette stuff on here. There's it's wonderful. Look, what do I have to talk to you? Cinderella. It's all about the mice, man. The mice are what make this movie. Anyway, it is a terrific film. Still one of the most successful films of all time. With that, I think we are done this week. I am off to Film Week now.
Yes.
To talk about Toy Story 4.
Yes.
You know what, folks? It's great.
It's really good.